sky, that's right. Very sad. Welcome to the mini-story for Day of the Dead. In the mini-story, I will do 3 things. I will make a statement. For example, I arrived in Guatemala. When you hear a statement, a sentence, you just say, ah, or oh. Okay? You need to say that, show that you understand this is not a question. Okay? A statement is not a question. So, when you hear a statement, say, ah. For example, I arrive in Guatemala. Okay? The second thing I will do is ask a question you know the answer to. For example, where do I arrive?
I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead.
I will stop.
November 1st.
You say the answer. Okay? You must say the answer to every question. I say, I arrive in Guatemala.
I arrived in Guatemala.
Where did I arrive? You say,
Guatemala.
Guatemala. Okay, easy. And number 3, I might ask a question you don't know the answer to. If you don't know the answer, just guess. Say any answer, but you must answer every question. Use your pause button if necessary. Okay, let's begin. Okay, here we go. I arrived in
Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
November 1st.
Did
I arrive?
I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
Yes, I arrived in Guatemala. Where did I arrive?
I arrived in Guatemala.
Guatemala, right? I arrived in
Guatemala.
I arrived in Guatemala
on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
November 1st. Who arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead?
Arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
Right? I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Did I arrive in Guatemala on November 3rd?
No. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
On November 3rd, I arrived in Guatemala on November 1st. What day did I arrive in Guatemala?
I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead.
I arrived in Guatemala
November 1st.
on November 1st. Where did I arrive on November 1st?
I arrived in Guatemala.
Guatemala, right? I arrived in Guatemala
on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. I was curious about this holiday, so I went to the cemetery to see what was happening. Was I angry about this holiday?
No.
I wasn't angry.
I was angry about this holiday.
Was I sad about this holiday?
No. I wasn't
sad about this holiday. I was curious about this holiday.
Yes.
Who was curious about this holiday?
Me. I was
curious
about this holiday.
I was curious about this holiday. What was I curious about?
I am curious about this
A
holiday.
holiday. Right? I was curious about the holiday. Which holiday was I curious about?
Which holiday
was I
was
curious about?
the
The
day of the
dead.
dead,
I
November
was
1st
curious about the day
of the dead.
the dead. Was I curious about the day
Day
of
of
the
the
dead?
dead,
Or was I curious about Christmas?
Christmas,
No, I was curious about
the
the
holiday,
Day of the Dead.
the
of
day of the
course.
dead, of course.
I was curious about the Day of the Dead. So I went to the cemetery to see what was happening. Where did I go?
Guatemala,
To the cemetery. I went to the
the
cemetery.
cemetery. I went to the
Did
cemetery.
I go to the cemetery? Or did I go to
the cemetery
airport?
airport?
Easy. I went to
The cemetery.
Who went to the cemetery?
Me, I went to the cemetery.
Right, AJ. I went to the cemetery. Where did I go?
Guatemala,
To
I
the
go to the
cemetery.
cemetery.
Right.
I went to the
The
cemetery.
cemetery. When did I go
To the cemetery.
the cemetery?
I went to
November
November
1st,
1st. November
day
1st,
of
the
the
day
dead.
of the dead.
I
I went to the
to the
cemetery.
cemetery.
November 1st, the day of the
On
dead.
the Day of the Dead. November
The 1st,
1st.
November 1st.
Why did I go to the cemetery?
I went to the cemetery to see what happening.
Well, to see what was happening.
I went to the cemetery to see what happening.
What was happening. Who went to the cemetery to see what was happening?
Me, I went to the
Me,
cemetery to
AJ,
see
went
what
to
happening.
the cemetery to see what was happening. Where was the cemetery?
Guatemala,
In Guatemala. The cemetery was in Guatemala. What is the Day of the Dead?
a holiday
A holiday. The Day of the Dead
is a holiday.
When is the Day of the Dead?
November 1st,
November 1st. The Day of the Dead
November 1st.
was and is November 1st. Okay. So I went to the cemetery
On the day of the
on
dead,
the Day of the Dead
November 1st.
to see
What
was
happening?
happening. What I found was quite interesting.
Yes, what I find is very
Was
extreme.
it boring? No, it wasn't boring.
It's Warren Belling.
Was it interesting?
Yes,
Yes.
I find
It was
quite interesting.
The cemetery was interesting. How did I feel about the cemetery?
cemetery. I felt
it
it was interesting.
Or I thought it was interesting. Was it boring or was it interesting? It was interesting. Of course, it was interesting. What was interesting? The cemetery. The cemetery was interesting.
The cemetery.
When was the cemetery interesting?
On the day of the dead, November 1st.
It was interesting on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Okay, the atmosphere in the cemetery was like a party.
Was like a party.
Was the atmosphere very sad?